Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the McCune Charitable Foundation. And the Nieper Natural History Programming Fund for KNME-TV. And viewers like you.
This week on New Mexico in Focus, a decades-long cry for nuclear justice in New Mexico gains new hope.
They were literally knocked out of bed by the blast and experienced a light like no other they'd ever seen before.
And our land returns with a fascinating look at our relationship with the night sky. New Mexico in Focus starts now. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm your host, Gene Grant. As usual, we have some great pictures to go along with Laura Paskus's monthly Our Land report. That's later in the show. We'll also look at what New Mexico's refugee resettlement program expects as thousands of Afghans arrive at Holloman Air Force Base and Fort Bliss. The Line Opinion panel debates the efficacy of a proposal for a mental health helpline. The group also talks about whether it's time to hit pause on new charter schools as districts face uncertain enrollment numbers. We begin with Virgin Galactic's next big challenge, proving its spacecraft is safe enough to fly again. If you've been around long enough, you might remember a local restaurant and watering hole outside Taos called the Old Blinking Light. We're talking about a different blinking light this week, and I doubt it's on anyone's list of New Mexico favorites. This blinking light is on the instrument cluster of Virgin Galactic spaceship Unity, and it tells pilots when they're in danger of flying an arc that's too shallow to keep them on a course to land at Spaceport America. Now, as first reported by the New Yorker magazine, it flashed during the July 11th flight with Richard Branson aboard. Now the FAA is investigating the flight and has grounded the ship, the VSS Unity. That was a popular topic in our weekly viewer poll, by the way. Our Line Opinion panel is here to figure out just how big this is or might be for space tourism and for the company. Line regular, former State Senator Diane Snyder returns to our panel. Good to have you back. Her former colleague in the State Senate and progressive strategist Eric Griego takes another turn with us. And for the Santa Fe Reporter, newspaper editor and publisher Julianne Grimm once more. Now, Julianne, how does this strike you? As a, sort of a how the mighty have fallen story, or maybe just more as just another hiccup in an inherently tricky endeavor? Is it one or the other, in the middle? How do you see this?
Well, you mentioned the New Yorker piece, which I think is really important. This journalist, Nicholas Schmidl, I think is how he says his name. He's just recently published a book about Virgin Galactic. It came out in the spring, and he talks about how he sees a disconnect between the company's lofty rhetoric and its supersonic risks. And I think that's a really good way, to phrase it. Obviously, he's put the thought and the time into studying this company, but here you've got a little bit of a suspicious timeline. Last month, the company says, we're going to ground ourselves because we really want to work on making this better and speedier, only to learn a month later the FAA is grounding you. And so I'm a bit suspicious about that. And I think that, the nature of this commercialization means that there's kind of this combination of entertainment and marketing and really slick packaging. And I think it does kind of get in the way of a little bit of a harder look at this emerging industry.
Hey, Eric, when you think about this, it's so interesting. Virgin Galactic says no one was in danger, but then the FAA is looking into it. It's either one or the other, it seems to me. What's your gut feeling on this?
Well, the industry's been led by some sort of entrepreneurs, cowboys. If you think about who's trying to drive this sort of next big leap, Elon Musk and Bezos and Sir Richard Branson. These are folks whose whole brand is being, sort of these cutting edge, kind of pioneers and stuff. I will say that, full disclosure, I was working for Governor Richardson when we got this literally off the ground. And so any blame or whatever, so I don't want to sound like a hypocrite. I have to say I wasn't overly enthusiastic, but I was a good soldier. But along the way, and I know Senator Snyder can probably speak to this too, along the way, we were asked to not only invest, enormous amounts of money for New Mexico, $220 million. Local communities were asked to invest. But the most important thing relevant to this safety issue is we were asked to exempt every manufacturer, anybody involved in the process from any kind of liability.
That's right.
And I voted
they really
against
pushed
that.
hard for that, didn't they?
Yeah, I
really
voted
pushed
against
hard
it, and
for
I
that.
I was roasted by the industry, and it really, and the whole idea was this myth that if you don't do everything, cut corners, exempt liability, invest millions of dollars, that you're going to lose this industry. And I just think that's a kind of a theme that echoes in states like ours, where we're looking for something big to change our economy, and we were hoping that this, figuratively and literally would do it, right? Lift us off. But I think the FAA's just sort of said, wait a minute, take a breath here, right? I know you guys really want this, but you got to be safe. It's not okay to have 1.4% of people who've been on these flights be fatalities. That's not sustainable, right? And the other thing is just, the billionaire, this billionaire boondoggle. I mean, I hope it's successful. I hope it provides economic development that it says it'll provide. If you look at the research, it's, Chris Erickson over at New Mexico State did a great study about, the verdict is out if it's really going to be worth all the money we're putting into it. But besides the money and the economic development, I think the more fundamental question is it safe, right? And I think that's where the FAA is really about. Like, you want to make lots of money, good on you, but you got to make sure people are safe. That's Even billionaires who go up got to be safe. Right?
Good points there. Senator Snyder, not that anyone's crying over, the perhaps agonizing decision for people who can afford the now $450,000 ticket, by the way, but no one wants to see anyone get hurt. And this has real implications for Virgin Galactic's business plan, I would think, doesn't it?
I think so, but the thing that, a couple of observations. One is things like this happened back when we were first going into space. Sometimes mistakes were corrected and everything went on great. Sometimes mistakes killed people, as we know so I'm hoping, because I was, as Senator Griego said, I was one of the supporters in the Senate. Not the liability, but for us investing money in the space industry. And I hope this is something that can simply be corrected. But I do think, yes, their stock dropped tremendously in value. So I think it really does impact their business plan. But one other thing, I did do some reading on the gentleman from the New Yorker, and it seems to me that he's just a tiny bit biased against the company. So I also take that with a grain of salt. I'm looking forward to hearing the FAA hopefully come out with a clearance that it was simply a mistake, an oversight that can be fixed. Because as you said, we seriously do not want anyone harmed. Right. But this is still we've seen great growth around the industry itself. And funniest thing is we never get much media coverage of the small companies that are doing business around the space industry and space tourism. So I'm hoping that for New Mexico and our money we've invested, that it is something that was minor, can be corrected, and we can go forward with growing an industry in New Mexico.
Good point there. Julia, let me read you in part what the FAA had to say here. Quote, Virgin Galactic may not return the Spaceship Two vehicle to flight until the FAA approves the final mishap investigation report or determines the issues related to the mishap do not affect public safety. And I have to wonder, I read that out here to say this. Virgin Galactic didn't exactly initially report this red light to the FAA. And I gotta wonder if that's part and parcel with the FAA's annoyance here, so to speak, to use that word in a flip way. That, if they had maybe worked with the FAA a little bit closer, maybe it wouldn't have come down quite so harsh. I'm guessing here, I'm interested in your thoughts on this.
So I did a little bit of number crunching myself, based on what the FAA has said. They've said that this ship was out of its designated airspace for 1 minute and 40 seconds on a 15-minute flight. So that's about 11% of the time. So the question is, can this spaceship stay in its lane? Can it safely interact with other air traffic and, whatever else is going on up there above our heads? And I don't know, if you're on a road trip and you spend 11% of the time driving in the wrong lane, Does that put it in different perspective? I mean, I'm certainly not an expert on the technicalities of how the FAA is reviewing this.
Sure.
But I do think it's something that people are going to be watching closely. And really what this does is, right now it delays the flight of, 4 months past, the initial time that Virgin Galactic said it was going to south ground. And so I think, we'll be watching to see how much of a delay really results, from this, how long until they do some more testing. They do have one more test flight that's going up, I believe, for the Italian Air Force. Is that
that's right,
still happening?
That's right. I wonder. That's a good point there. Hey guys, we're out of time on Virgin Galactic, but let's keep our necks craned to the sky for our land. Especially at night, many of us can't help but gaze up at the stars, planets, maybe a comet or a meteorite if we're lucky. Every season of the year is different up above, and right now we can see the line of Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter just after sunset. But even if the view varies, that's the same sky humans have looked up at for eons. When we hide that night sky from view with lights or pollution, what's that do to our connection with the past and the future? Our land is back, and correspondent Laura Paskus takes us outside to see New Mexico's skies.
For millions of years, throughout our evolution as a species, we have looked to the same night sky. We've told stories, navigated, wondered what lies beyond our own beautiful Earth. That sky belonged to all of us, not just a few.
Space is so big. A lot of people say that it makes them feel insignificant. We are very tiny in the grand scheme of things, but being able to look out and see some of these things that are so far away, so big, the scale of this is so unimaginable, and yet we are able to take part in that. We are part of that. And so in one sense you feel small, in another sense you feel big, and it's just kind of magic.
Today, we celebrate dark places, call them dark sky parks, and the National Park Service holds star parties, treating the night sky with the same reverence as deep canyons or remote mountaintops.
We can look at the Ring Nebula, and the Ring Nebula is exactly what it sounds like. It's a ring floating in the sky. It's almost a perfect ring. And what it is it's a dying star. The day that I discovered the things that I can see through an amateur telescope is a day that I'll remember till the day I die. I saw objects that looked like diamonds scattered on velvet. I saw clouds, and I saw galaxies. I saw galaxies that were 300 or 400 million light years away. And the idea of then showing that to somebody and saying the light from this galaxy left that galaxy long before dinosaurs even walked the earth, and seeing their faces just go, whoa, that's as cool as it gets. You can't beat that.
Isabel and Rick from Brownsville, Texas, stopped at the Capulin Star Party while on vacation.
We're all stardust. We're all stardust. We're all part of the universe, So it's just, something that, you gaze upon on a daily basis if you're out, and you wonder,
It's just beautiful at night.
Absolutely.
But over the past century, we've steadily changed our relationship with the sky. In his novel Contact, Carl Sagan wrote about cosmic isolationism, of how, without even noticing, most people cut themselves off from the sky. We learned more about what lies beyond our own world. We've looked deeper into space, but our own sky view, we lit it up, concealed so much of what we used to see.
One of the things that we lose in terms of our children, particularly, is we are limiting the scope of their imagination and their curiosity. And that has, of course, tremendous repercussions for the future. We lose the appreciation that we personally get from looking at the sky. If the sky is nothing but a glow above you from the streetlights, then there is nothing to see, and there's nothing to appreciate.
Finn says there are simple ways to fight light pollution. Turn off outside lights, light cities more responsibly, even close your curtains at night.
One of the nice things about light pollution is that it doesn't destroy the night. It just hides it. So you can get the light back like that if you just turn off the lights. There are not a lot of environmental things where the solution is so easy.
Carl Sagan wrote about how, at the very moment that humans discovered the scale of the universe and found that our most unconstrained fancies were in fact dwarfed by the true dimensions of even the Milky Way galaxy, we took steps that ensured that our descendants would be unable to see the stars at all. But we can change that. We can protect the skies all of our ancestors watched. We can turn out the lights and look up and wonder together. For New Mexico in Focus and Our Land, I'm Laura Paskus.
Should New Mexico take a step back to look at the impacts and efficacy of charter schools? It's a question that pops up regularly in the state legislature, and the Albuquerque Public School Board recently considered and later postponed a decision on whether or not to send a letter to lawmakers supporting a temporary halt to the creation of additional charter schools. Senator Snyder, do you think this pandemic is driving this new interest in a possible moratorium? What's going on here?
Well, truthfully, I hadn't thought of that aspect of it. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think, and I'm biased on this subject, so I just think that.
In what sense is your bias?
Well, I'm very pro charter school.
Okay.
I think it's one more step in trying to eliminate charter schools. And I have to laugh. When they were first created, primarily the teachers union said, oh, it's the first step toward creating vouchers. Vouchers will come out of this. And that hadn't happened so far, at least not in New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like once again, I think it's all politics. I think that.
But let me ask you this, Senator, the numbers are not politically driven. Is there a sense of that lower enrollment possibilities from this pandemic?
Lower enrollment from the pandemic, yes, for sure. But I think that has more to do with homeschooling than it does with charter schools. Mm-hmm. And I think people have found it. And I know some people said, wow, we were so successful with homeschooling. Our kids are really jumping ahead. We'd like to keep doing this. So they are. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, the numbers that we hear are the kids want to get back in school, but mom and dad think it's great. So I think the numbers we're hearing are a little bit distorted. I don't think it's the charter schools creating the lack of enrollment. Okay. However, that's an option that parents now have. Mm-hmm. So if they're taking advantage of it, then in fact it would impact the individual, like APS schools.
That's a good point. But let me swing Senator Griego on this point here. Opponents say charter schools often outperform public schools, and a moratorium takes away a family's right, what Senator was just getting to, a family's right to choose. They also say many of those charter schools cater to underserved or vulnerable populations as well. Is that a valid argument in your view?
You know, those are talking points. I mean, I'm not an expert on the research, but I do know that the results have been mixed. I mean, there's some schools that really outperform. And remember, charter schools are public schools. You have to admit people by lottery. So there's a lot of confusion around them being private schools. Mm-hmm. They're public schools. So there are schools that absolutely outperform public schools in Albuquerque and around the state. There are also some schools that are, frankly, pretty ill-conceived, and with folks who just don't know what they're doing. We've had several scandals around that. So you know, I'm one of those rare animals where I'm a hardcore public education supporter, what came up through the public education system. And I happen to have a kid in a charter school, and I helped actually start a couple charter schools. I think where they work well for kids who need something different to keep them engaged, whatever that is that extra help or arts or whatever it is, I think that's an area that they serve. I am sympathetic, just to be fair, that we have to think through this idea that maybe diverting kids away from their neighborhood schools as opposed to investing in their neighborhood schools is something we have to just be honest about. Is that really happening? I think that the pandemic has really sort of kind of poured salt on an open wound for folks who are worried about charters, their effect on resources, their effect on diverting educators and so on, and kids to neighborhood schools. You know, not everybody has a great neighborhood school. A lot of the communities around the state do, but not all do. And they have to choose, as a parent, you have to choose, like, if you still want to have a public school, but you want to have a different kind of experience for your kid. And that's what we decided. We decided, you know, our son really wanted something a little bit different in his education, and we supported that. Had he not gotten into the lottery, by the way, they get him by lottery, he probably would have gone to his neighborhood school. And I think that's certainly an option that parents always have, in addition to keeping their kids home if that's what they think is best for them.
Good point there. You know, Julianne, as we mentioned, APS considered sending a letter to lawmakers encouraging a temporary moratorium, but they backed off, at least for now, after the public outcry. I'm wondering, do you expect other school districts to also consider jumping into this debate?
Well, you know, this debate, as others have pointed out, is not a new one. Certainly, it's something that you know, districts all over the state have been dealing with. You know, Santa Fe Public Schools is not immune to that. They had kind of a well-publicized dispute with a charter school that was, you know, using a building that Santa Fe Public Schools wanted to use. I think it's also of note that, you know, back in 2019, when this bill was at the legislature and didn't go anywhere, Shelby Perea from the Albuquerque Journal reports that APS opposed the bill. They didn't want a moratorium then. So I was kind of wondering, I don't follow APS politics real closely, but I'm sure the board composition has changed since then. And we do know that the enrollment numbers have dropped again since then. And this is alarming, you know, to school officials that are trying to make plans. And I think there's this instinct to feel threatened, you know, by the charter schools, as I think has come up also. So I think, you know, we haven't solved it. And I don't know that the legislature placing a moratorium would necessarily solve it. I mean, we often have this moratorium ideas like, well, we need to stop all the action so we can study it. And you know, we can study it without stopping it and without, you know, affecting educational outcomes for kids that are hoping to stay in their charter school or charter schools that are, you know, getting ready to launch. So I definitely think we could stand to have, you know, study on this issue.
It's a good point there. You know, Senator Snyder, I got to wonder if we're sort of just in a bubble here, because we really haven't seen an increase in charter schools in the last 5 years. I mean, when you think about it, there's around 96 statewide, serving 28,000 kids. Is this much ado about nothing? I mean, this is 28,000 kids is not exactly a ton of kids.
It isn't. And if you were saying those 20,000 were all in Albuquerque, that would be almost nothing.
Good point there.
But I don't know and don't have the statistics, and maybe they do, on charter schools in rural areas. I don't have much information on that. Of course, I hear everything about Albuquerque, but in some ways it is, because if you take out 2 years basically of pandemic, then you only have a few years of things have been skewed, I think, by the pandemic. So I think maybe it's premature to be doing that, but I also agree with Julianne. You don't have to shut them down to study them and see, or they're not shutting them down. Let me get that corrected. But we don't have to stop creating charter schools to study their effectiveness. And like Senator Griego said, some have been outstanding, really, really good, really beneficial for the student, because we know this is a fact. Kids learn differently in different environments. So what makes one child learn, then I mean, to me, the idea of music and theater and science, where that interest, because part of schooling is getting the child to pay attention.
That's right.
And that if you can do it.
Let me do this, Senator. Let me swing to Senator Griego real quick, just for this last half a minute. Senator, some high-profile charter schools have run into financial issues. You know, is there enough oversight? Are we in lockstep with the needs of the charter schools and what we need as citizens?
You know, there have been some really bad actors who started charter schools and took advantage of public funding. So, and I think most of them have been held accountable. So the short answer is, Gene, I think that there's always room for more oversight.
Right.
APS decided they were going to charter their own school. So now, if you're a charter school in Albuquerque, you can either go to the APS system or you can go to the state, and that's
right.
the way it works here. So, first of all, you don't just show up one day and open a school. You have to have a charter. You have to have a governing board. There's a lot of work to be done, and if you don't perform, you can be shut down. And that's one of the arguments for charter schools. Is unlike some low-performing schools that, for whatever reason, aren't succeeding, it's hard to shut them down. Charter schools, you can be shut down if you have corrupt management, or if you're just not performing, you can be shut down.
And it's happened. That's right.
Yeah, and it's happened. So, but I think there's always room for oversight. We had that conversation around, maybe the state auditor or somebody should really be doing more oversight. But look at what happened at APS with the recent scandal. So I think everybody could use a little more oversight, to be honest with you.
Good point. Good final thought there. That's all the time we have right now on that topic. But we'd love to know what you think. Drop us a line on Facebook or Twitter and let us know if you support a temporary moratorium on charter schools and why. Up next for our group, a new hotline is on the way for behavioral health emergencies, but will its promises ring hollow?
In my career, this is the largest effort I've worked with, and partnering with our team at HSD and working with Lutheran Family Services, I'm finding this to be a very educational process for myself as well as we go through these steps.
The Federal Radiation Exposure Compensation Act was designed to do just what it sounds like. But for years, men and women near the Trinity test site haven't been able to file claims. Now there's less than a year until the law's deadline to apply for compensation. NMIF correspondent Russell Contreras has been keeping tabs on the Downwinders' quest for recognition through his job as the race and justice reporter at Axios. He recently sat down with Tina Cordova, who founded the Tularosa Basin Downwinders Consortium a decade and a half ago, to talk about her work and about prospects for the inclusion in the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act.
Tina, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad to be here, Russ, and I appreciate the invitation to be able to share with you about the New Mexico Downwinders.
Before we get started about the pending federal legislation about the Downwinders, take us back to July 1945. What happened to the communities of Tularosa and Mescalero Apache during the Trinity test?
Well, first of all, we have to remember that in 1945, people didn't have access to televisions or radios or telephones, and there was very little communication. So most people have said to me that they were asleep. They were literally knocked out of bed by the blast and experienced a light like no other they'd ever seen before, because the test actually produced more light and more heat than the sun. So you can imagine what that experience was like for them. And people were frightened. They thought it was the end of the world. They gathered together as families, and some told me we prayed the rosary. People wondered what had happened. Obviously, they didn't know what they had experienced, but the most salient point is that the bomb produced massive fallout that basically went in every direction and became part of the environment forevermore. And so people's lives were forever changed. Their environment and their lives were invaded by the fallout that was produced from the Trinity test.
And what kind of stories did the elders tell you about the Trinity test when they went to go visit? Because they didn't know what happened, and you could still walk to the site days afterwards to see what went on. What did they tell you?
Oh my gosh, I've had some really amazing stories shared with me about that. I mean, there was a time, like you said, that they allowed people to freely go out there unencumbered. So people went out there and picnicked. They took children on field trips and fed them out there. I've had people tell me, members of my own family, we packed our pockets with Trinitite. We ate lunch out there and then we went home. I have a dear friend in Tularosa who said that her parents and her aunt and uncle went out there. Her aunt was pregnant at the time, and when the baby was born, the dear child was born without eyes. So there was such a lack of concern for human health that they didn't even close the site to visitors. And I understand that into the 50s there was still unfettered access to the site, a radioactive site. I mean, when you go out there today, there's signs everywhere warning about the dangers. And imagine what the dangers were, in the months and years just after the test. And allowing people to take things out of there. It's against the law now, and there's signs that warn against that today. But imagine back then, people took things. I had another lady contact me that said, my father went out there in the days afterwards, and he salvaged a bunch of steel, and he built a swing set for us, and he brought back what looked like parachute material. And my mom used it to make curtains for our home and christening dresses for the children in our family. And she said everybody's been sick and dying ever since.
The federal government at the time has always maintained that the wind blew the radioactive material away from communities where people were living, where your family grew up. But people would later say, yes, but there were small clouds of fumes that came back. What kind of stories did folks tell you that they went outside and experienced ash on homes and clothes and so forth?
Well, that's the oral histories that have been recorded by us throughout these many years, 16 years that we've been working on this. People have told me those stories over and over, and they're too similar to be untrue. And so what people say is that they experienced an ash that fell from the sky for days afterwards, which is probably very likely. The government didn't even have people in place for 24 hours monitoring what happened with the fallout. So for example, in the community of Carrizozo, the day of the blast, the Geiger counters went off the charts. That's very well documented. It's the only town that we have true documentation that the government has provided. And the Geiger counters went off the charts, and they called the men who were there physically monitoring the fallout off and said, you have to get out of there, it's dangerous. And so we don't know whatever happened in Tularosa or Socorro or Alamogordo or Ruidoso. But we can rely on people's memories of that day, and people have told me that ash fell from the sky, it got on everything, and people were living very organic lives. They were depending on the rainwater, collection of rainwater for drinking and cooking purposes. They were using the water out of the acequias or the ditch systems. Tularosa has the largest ditch system in New Mexico, and people were relying on that water, and it was now fully contaminated. To say nothing of the fact that we also didn't have grocery stores because no one had refrigeration. We had ice boxes. And so people couldn't keep things refrigerated like we do now, and you couldn't go to a grocery store and buy meat, produce, or dairy. Everything that you ate was produced at your own home by, using your own means. And of course, all of that was now contaminated. It was July when our cisterns would have been filling up with water because it was the monsoon season. And it was the height of the harvest when women would have been canning and drying everything they could get, out of their gardens for the upcoming winter. And so truly, we were maximally exposed to radiation as a result of the type of test at Trinity and the fact that we lived these very organic lifestyles, entirely dependent on the earth, the environment for our well-being.
Then the rare cancers came. When did residents realize or understand that they were suffering from different forms of cancer that were unusual and not the cancer seen in other parts of New Mexico?
Well, people literally started getting sick about 10 years after the test. Within that first 10 years, we started to see people dying from cancer at a time when no one had ever heard the word cancer in their communities. A good example is what happened in my own family. I'm the fourth generation in my family to have cancer since 1945. The two great-grandfathers that I had living in Tularosa, alive at the time, both got stomach cancer in 1955, almost at the very same time, what they called stomach cancer, at a time when no one even knew what that meant. And there was no treatment for them. They sent them home on morphine, and they suffered a great deal before they finally passed away. And so there's a latency period associated with exposure to radiation, and then when you manifest disease. But people started to realize that there was something wrong because we were seeing so much sickness and so much death. And it wasn't until much later on that people started connecting the dots. And honestly, there was very little known about this until we started our organization, the Tularosa Basin Downwinders Consortium, or TBDC for short. There was really no organized effort to bring attention to the negative health effects suffered by the people of New Mexico as a result of Trinity till we started doing our work. And now, so many people have come forward. I receive information from people all over the United States because people have left and moved off their places. I received a health survey this week in the mail from Georgia, and the woman wanted to document her husband's cancer and death. He was a man who lived, his early years in Carrizozo and landed up suffering the consequences of that. And I think another thing too that I cannot miss telling everyone about is that we had casualties from Trinity, and it's documented now, and they were our babies. After a 10-year decline in infant mortality in the state of New Mexico because of the advent of antibiotics and better hygienic practices, we went from something like 33 babies per 1,000 dying in New Mexico, and in the months right after Trinity, the months of August, September, October, November, December, we saw these huge spikes in infant mortality, and we went to something like 100 babies per 1,000. And these babies were dying from a dysentery-like syndrome. And a healthcare worker contacted the Manhattan District Project and said, do you all know of anything that we might be able to do or something that may be causing this? Because everything we're doing is not working. And the Manhattan District Project decided to deny and deflect and absolutely lie about it. And our babies died. Our babies died that year. And that is like the most heartbreaking part of the story for me, and something that I think is unconscionable.
When you started bringing this to your attention to elected officials, what was the initial reaction that New Mexico folks, residents of the Trinity test, should be included in the Radiation Compensation Act? Because right now they're not. What was the reaction you got from elected officials? Were they engaged, or did they ignore you at first?
So RECA, the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, is a 31-year-old program that has paid $2.5 billion in claims to downwinders of the Nevada test site. New Mexico is also downwind of the Nevada test site, very well documented. When they went to Nevada and started the testing, they put monitoring sites all over the West, and there were monitoring sites in New Mexico. Those monitoring sites did show that we received radiation here through the summer of 1962. But the compensation ends at the New Mexico-Arizona border, as if I always say there's a lead curtain there that somehow has offered us protection to the radiation that we were regularly receiving from the Nevada test site. When we were first alerted to this and we started meeting with our elected officials, it was really interesting because there was this sort of almost as if they didn't know or didn't understand that people here had been damaged. But I have asked the question over and over, why were we not included in RECA in 1990 when it was conceived, when it was first enacted as a bill in the United States Congress? And I've had a variety of different answers. No one was looking out for you. Lately I've been saying, but we had 2 senators like all the other states that are included. No one was looking out for you. And now the regular answer we receive is adding you is going to cost too much, which adds incredible insult to injury when you think about the sacrifice and the suffering that the people of New Mexico have been through for 76 years, essentially, for 76 years. And so, we're not interested in hearing excuses any longer. If people decide, elected officials decide to remain complacent, knowing this story now, knowing what we've uncovered, if people decide to remain complacent in that, that makes them complicit in perpetuating a lie, because the government has always controlled the messaging. They said then, and they say now, that the area was remote and uninhabited, but we know that that is not true. We now have a map that actually says, that at 50 miles, for example, there were 14,000 people living, men, women, and children living adjacent to the test site. That is not remote and uninhabited. At 150 miles, there's close to 500,000 people living there at the time. And so, everyone knows the difference between right and wrong, and this is a social justice issue. It's about correcting a mistake. It was maybe not planned to be the mistake that it was, but there was health consequences, and the government did know some things in advance. They knew there would be fallout, and they knew that radiation was dangerous to human health. So the idea that they didn't know people would be harmed is absolutely not true.
Was it possible racial that you guys weren't included because the testing site of folks affected were Hispanic and Native American? Could that have also been a factor?
Well, it begs the question. You have to ask that question. The preponderance of people who were affected in New Mexico are people of color. Native Americans, Mexicanos, people who have lived here for hundreds, if not thousands of years. The preponderance of people who have received compensation through RECA are not that. And so it begs the question. I mean, I always wonder if that's not the reason that New Mexico is a sacrifice zone. We have the cradle to grave process taking place here. They open up the earth and take out the uranium. You know, we develop and test nuclear weapons here, and then they bury the waste here. We're under consideration now for a high-level waste repository, and the people most affected by this have always been people of color. The uranium miners are, you know, members of the Navajo Nation, Laguna and Acoma Pueblo. Those people were harmed greatly. There are 500 abandoned uranium mines. They took 32 million tons of uranium out of the earth and basically abandoned the mines, and people live adjacent to these mine sites. So you have to ask the question, how much does environmental racism play in the idea that the people who were so horribly harmed in New Mexico have been left to deal with it on their own?
In the last 30 seconds, how hopeful are you that this Radiation Act will get amended and extended and include people of New Mexico?
I am very hopeful right now because for the first time ever, we have members of Congress from other states who are greatly interested in this because their constituents for the first time will not be able to apply to the fund either. So extending it is going to have to take place for them. And that brings new people to the table to support the amendments to RECA and new people supporting the idea that we should be added as well.
Tina, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thousands of Afghan refugees have started arriving in New Mexico. At Holloman Air Force Base near Alamogordo, some 2,000 Afghans have arrived to what was first called a personnel camp in what has since been named Aman Omid Village by the military. Many more are at the Doña Ana Village in Fort Bliss. Now, what happens from here still isn't certain, but some of the refugees will stay in New Mexico. Late last week, while the first refugees were arriving, senior producer Matt Grubb spoke to one of the women in charge of the state's effort to resettle the children, women, and men who now call these villages home.
Angela Medrano, thanks for taking a few minutes to talk about the refugee resettlement program. I know you probably have the same questions that everyone else in New Mexico has at this point, which is how many people are going to be arriving from Afghanistan and when? What do you know right now?
Thank you, Matt. It's good to see you again. New Mexico at this point, Human Services Department knows that Holloman Air Force Base has been selected as one of the receiving sites for refugees in New Mexico. I am not aware of any individuals that have arrived yet. That's not to say that they have not, but we are working very closely with our partners in New Mexico to prepare for the arrival.
One of the things that I've heard from officials at the White House is that not everyone who comes to Holloman Air Force Base or to Fort Bliss is going to be relocated in New Mexico. These are just the military installations that have been identified. Do you have a sense of what portion might be coming to New Mexico, or is that still up in the air right now?
It's still up in the air right now, Matt. It's very, very hard to know how many refugees will choose to resettle in New Mexico. But we are in close communication with our contractor, Lutheran Family Services, who will be providing many of the services that the refugees will need as they transition to Holloman or who choose to resettle in New Mexico.
That's an important point, I think. It's a choice for them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, they may. Some of the refugees may arrive in New Mexico with family that are already located in the United States, either in New Mexico or in another state. Refugees may arrive with no family members in the United States, but may have some resources available to them. And these individuals will make a choice about where they'd like to reside within the U.S. And some may arrive with no resources and no family members available to them. And those are the ones I anticipate we would be providing the most assistance to.
Okay, and you mentioned that Lutheran Family Services is a contractor with the state to handle a lot of this. When do they sort of pick up the baton and start coordinating some of these services? At what point in the process?
That's a great question, Matt. You know, they've been working very, very hard with their national partner, their national organization, to be in close communication about those individuals that may be wishing to resettle in New Mexico, because there are other military bases where these individuals are arriving to. They may choose New Mexico and be transported to New Mexico to resettle in.
Okay. We spoke to a man named Mullah Akbar who emigrated from Afghanistan in the late 1980s. He owns a business down in Albuquerque. He pointed out that while it's small, there is a community of Afghan families in New Mexico, and it's growing. What role do they play in this process?
Gosh, Matt, I would assume that they would help to make this transition as smooth as possible for them, and hopefully step in to help volunteer with Lutheran Family Services or any of the other faith-based organizations that are going to be providing assistance to these individuals and help them feel welcome.
Is this the sort of situation where a person or a family needs some sort of sponsorship to be able to enter the U.S., or are they able to enter on their own through some of the immigration statuses, I guess, that the federal government designates?
Yeah, they're not required to have a sponsor, to my knowledge, Matt. So some of these individuals may not know anyone in the United States, and will have to make a decision about where they'd like to settle.
Do you have any COVID concerns, or is that something that's probably well taken care of by the time the state or Lutheran Family Services ends up interacting with these folks?
I don't have a lot of information about the COVID testing. It's my understanding that they are being tested upon arrival into the U.S., but I don't have confirmation of that from any formal source.
Okay. I know we're just in the early stages right now. Are there any comparisons that you can make to the influx of Latin immigrants and asylum seekers that we saw in 2019?
I wasn't involved in that effort, Matt, so I can't speak to that. In my career, this is the largest effort I've worked with, and partnering with our team at HSD and working with Lutheran Family Services, I'm finding this to be a very educational process for myself as well as we go through these steps.
Certainly. The program, to my understanding, it relies on federal funds, or does the state kick in money too?
It's a federally funded program, Matt. They provide us with a grant of award each year, specifically for this refugee effort. It's the Office of Refugee Resettlement Office that awards New Mexico funding. In federal fiscal year 20, we were awarded $1.2 million. Thus far in federal fiscal year 21, we've been awarded $1.1 million.
That sounds, it's millions of dollars, of course, but it doesn't sound like a lot. Do you anticipate needing more?
Depending on the number of individuals that choose to resettle in New Mexico, Matt, you are spot on. We may need additional funding, and I have not yet heard of any potential funding coming our way as a result of this effort. So we are staying in close communication with our federal partners about that.
I know that part of your job is not just speaking to the media, but talking to legislators too. Are you getting a lot of similar questions from them?
I haven't yet, Matt, but I'm headed to a legislative committee where this may come up.
Excellent. Well, we will let you get to that. Human Services Department Deputy Secretary Angela Madrano, we really thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matt. Take care.
New Mexicans struggling with a mental health crisis will soon have a new resource to get timely, effective help. It's designed on the now familiar model of 911 for medical emergencies. The 3 digits now are 988. The hotline was a bipartisan federal effort signed into law by then President Trump in the waning months of his presidency. It's described as an extension of the National Suicide Prevention Line and is expected to be up and running by July of next year. State officials are holding listening sessions right now to help them formulate a plan for implementing the federal hotline here at home. And Senator Griego, this has obviously worked well with 911 and even 311 here in Albuquerque. I'll remind folks for getting answers to basic questions surrounding city services. Hey, you were around at council when that thing got put in place, as a matter of fact. Do you think this could make an impact in terms of mental health services? Is this what we needed to have a direct line here?
So I'm all for more opportunities for people to access services, but the bottom line, like 911, like 311, you got to put the resources behind it. So if we have some place to call, you got to be able to refer somebody. And our biggest problem now is there aren't enough services for people who need basic mental health care. So if we put our money behind it and really fund the kind of infrastructure on mental health, so when you call, you can get services, I'm all for it. I hope it's not just a way to channel people and say, hey, why don't you try calling the Medicaid office on Monday and see if you can get an appointment next October, which is what happens now, unfortunately.
That's
often,
right. Mm-hmm. That's a fair point. Senator Snyder, experts like the U.S. Surgeon General have said we are headed for a mental health crisis coming out of this pandemic. People have been living in largely survival mode. But New Mexico has an additional wrinkle, of course. We're still trying to recover from the dismantling of the state's behavioral health system. So is this new hotline going to help with any of this?
I sincerely hope so. One of the things that I learned over the last few years is that New Mexico nationally has the highest suicide rate for veterans of any other state, and that within that we have the highest suicide rate for women veterans. Oh, wow. So we don't have, as Senator said, we don't have the resources. So with the phone line, which is, I think, an excellent idea, you've got to put those resources into place. I am fully for it. I think but we need to stop pretending that, talking a good game, I guess is what I'm saying. Get with it and get the resources in place.
Julianne, the benefit of the 3-digit hotline, according to supporters, is that everything is streamlined. No chance of drop calls, 911, 311, all that kind of thing. That makes some logical sense, it seems to me, when someone is really in a tough jam. Am I thinking of this wrong? It seems like that's not a bad way to go here.
No, but I think it will take a long time for it to catch on and really be useful to people. It's the reason why New Mexico had to start using the area code when we dial, not just the 505, but the 575, wherever you are, you have to use that now because many phone numbers in our state, including the phone number for the reporter, begin with 988. So I think that's one thing that, people will be catching on to. I'm just also concerned about getting the message out, and will the people who need this message the most really receive it? I'm thinking about teenagers. Our state, as the senator said, we've got one of the highest suicide rates in the nation. It affects young people. Between 2014 and 2018, fully a third of the suicides in our state were people between 15 and 24. Wow. And so making sure that young people know about 988 and are willing to use it, and when they use it, they actually get a targeted service that helps them. I think those are some of the challenges ahead.
Senator Griego, is this an opportunity for us to, boost behavioral health resources? And what more are we missing beyond just a hotline, which we've had for a while now in terms of suicide prevention? Is there another step beyond this line we could be taking?
Well, you mentioned the dismantling of the behavioral health system. I think we're still not where we need to be. I think we're trying to rebuild it. I think if we're serious about a comprehensive, deep strategy on dealing with behavioral health, it's the kind of dollars that we're prepared to invest. It's kind of like this whole early childhood constitutional amendment and the funding we've been talking about. You have to start from how are you going to get people to go into the field so that you have enough people in social work and counselors to actually meet the demand. But anyone who's tried to access this care for family members or for themselves knows that it's a very, very tough. If you don't have insurance, it's really tough to access. And so I think if we're serious about it, let's put our money where our mouth is, and let's put the kind of resources that we've put into, for example, law enforcement. Like we can never possibly give enough money to law enforcement. Well, I think even most people in law enforcement was like, yeah, we need to be better funding behavioral health and mental health services, so that would make our lives and our community safer and our jobs easier, because we're underinvesting in it, and that's across the state. Even the places that have really made commitments to it are not really investing enough in that pipeline for providers, and then making it really easy to get services, not just ask for services, but to actually get the services.
And we all expect our police to be handling other things at this point than these type of calls. The public listening sessions on the New Mexico rollout of the 988 hotline continue through September 23rd. We'll have information on our website about how you can participate in those remaining sessions. You can also track that info on all things NMIF on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. Labor Day weekend is in the books. The annual end of summer holiday weekend also included the ending of federal unemployment benefits for many New Mexicans. We got after this subject on Wednesday of this week on a Facebook Live with representatives from the New Mexico Center on Law and Poverty and line regular Professor Serge Martinez. Now, I want to note particularly from the discussion that individual states do have the ability to continue these benefits, and that New Mexico might be a viable place for an extension. Now, that notion to extend benefits locally was also discussed between my colleague Antonia Gonzalez and U.S. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh in an interview also from earlier this week. We couldn't bring it to you on the show, so stop over on YouTube to see the full version. It's well worth it. In fact, this week we had so much going on, you might not get the full sense of just how much without cruising all of our social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're always happy to hear from you there. Thanks again for joining us and for staying informed and engaged. We'll see you again next week in Focus.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the McCune Charitable Foundation and the Nieper Natural History Programming Fund for KNME TV. And viewers like you.